Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. In this daily editorial, we are getting an update from Graphene Manufacturing Group, traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol GMG. I am chatting with the founder and CEO, Craig Nicol. Now, because I've received so many emails from all of you, our listeners, we are simply going to be focusing on answering the questions that have come in regarding initially the company's graphene production and some of the questions around that. Then we're going to get into a couple more questions on the batteries, more of the pouch packs, and also touch on the other divisions of the company. So, Craig, again, we have a lot of questions to get through, so let's kick it off. Focused on graphene, when will GMG be publishing a data sheet on your graphene and graphene production?
Hey, Cory, great to be back on. Graphene production and our ability to produce the graphene at the right quality is always a focus of the company. That is the genesis of the company and always will be the core of the company. It is a moving and progressing feast of information. And so one is to be able to describe it in an easy way to understand that it can be shared. And two is to make sure that it's actually where it should be to be shared at that point, because we continue to evolve it and make it into the graphene production system that we want. We're currently progressing through the $1.5 million graphene expansion project that we've committed to earlier this year. And we expect that to be delivered by the end of June next year. There is a potential for us to very clearly release information on that. But I think the best things to take into account is we're not selling the graphene, obviously. We're putting into products, and those products have variable rates of use of the graphene, including the lubricant, which is 0.01%. And the coating for thermal XR is a small number of percent. But the batteries is obviously 50%, but which battery is it and how much you need? So the numbers for the graphene production in the end, to be really clear, kind of don't mean much, because we can make millions of litres of lubricant with a very small amount of graphene that other people might think is not much. So we'll be working through those, and we'll have to be clear to investors at that point once that project is finished, and then we can come out and say this is where we're going. But it's going to be a very interesting diagram of what the amount of product we can make from that production unit. So I hope that makes it a bit clearer.
Sure. Yeah, I think it does. But again, if anybody has follow-up questions, as always, you can email me. Let's talk about how efficient GMG's graphene production process is. The question is, how much graphene can be produced from 1 kilogram of methane using your process? Also, how else should we be able to assess just how efficient this process is?
Yeah, it's a really good question again. And it's all in the space of what amount of inputs give what amount of outputs, and then the emissions from that. So a few things. One is that you can work out how many carbon atoms are in a gigajoule gas, which is about 75% of 1 gigajoule. And 1 gigajoule or 1 MMBTU, depends on where you are, it's pretty much the same in the world. That's about 15 kilograms of carbon atoms, and 20 kilograms in total. So 15 kilograms of carbon atoms gives you in 1 gigajoule. And so when you buy a gigajoule or MMBTU, those carbon atoms come to you. Now, we don't use all of those carbon atoms. We have to say that up front. We selectively take some of them, and that depends on what graphene we're trying to make. And then those carbon atoms become the graphene that we want, and then the rest is retained in the methane, and then obviously we have hydrogen remaining. So the percentage of that is a small percentage that we take. So in the end, the production of graphene from 1 gigajoule is large amounts of carbon atoms in a very small amount of gas, and then we objectively take a percentage of that, which is generally less than 10%. So that probably gives people an understanding of the product cost is if your gigajoule is sitting at your price of your gas is sitting around $1 or $2 or $3, depends on where you are in North America, then you really are getting a very low cost carbon to your door, because in say $3 you're getting 15 kilograms of carbon atoms, and then we might be getting 10% of that. So you're talking bit around $1 or so to be able to get those carbon atoms out into graphene in our process, with of course electricity and labour and some maintenance costs on top.
When it comes to scaling, then, what's the most important or the most important aspects of being able to scale this?
Yeah, so I think that the important things are the ability to make the right quality graphene as we scale. That's second thing is we make the impact of the plant to be the lowest as we can, and so hence we're putting a lot of effort into our first expansion project to be a microgrid where we take the hydrogen and the methane gas and power that into the plasmas, and also the water chilling and the other parts of the equipment. So managing the emissions and environmental footprint is very important. And that's all really gas engineering, and it's not that complicated. It's stuff that's done time and time again in the oil and gas industry. So that's one thing that we've got to manage carefully. And we aim to come out with our emissions footprint in a very managed way. And we're preparing all of the data to be able to come out and show that. And then as we scale, we're going to manage that very carefully. So obviously quality of the graphene, and then the emissions of our plant and how they will be managed in line with scaling. Now, the third one is obviously people. We need continue to attract, and we can seemingly continue to attract really good people to grow the team, to be able to build the machines that make our graphene, and to make our products and to sell and market our products. So people is probably the third one, and I guess because of our profile, which is growing, which is fantastic, in a clean tech space with a pretty unique value proposition, we tend to attract people who want to come work in that space, which is great. And we're just going to have to keep doing that. That'll never stop, because our people, they're only things that make this happen.
All right, thank you. Now, another question regarding graphene and production. Has GMG applied, or are you applying to become a verified graphene producer? This is a certain status that you need to apply for if you are selling graphene.
We've gone through all of these processes in times past when we're looking at selling the graphene as a powder. I'm obviously still the chair of the Australian Graphene Industry Association. I'm also the chair of the Australia's Advanced Materials and Batteries Council, and we're also members of the International Graphene Council, which is the largest graphene body in the world, based in America. And we're up to speed on where these standards are, and we do believe in them. It's just right now our graphene is being used wholly for our products. So if the ability to get a graphene stamp of approval is not a priority for us, I think one day we likely will. We've done numerous university reports on kind of third-party assessments on our graphene, which have passed, and we feel like they show that we have quality to be able to pass a graphene quality standard. But the most important thing to realize, I guess, is all graphenes are different, and what you're really after is the end outcome. And we kind of worked that out in 2017. And so you can have the best graphene in the world, but it doesn't have an end outcome for a customer that they want to buy. It means that you've got a very nice stamped product that no one will buy. So you've got to work on what's the product outcome that you're after to fill that need. And that sometimes may mean that you don't get a stamp for that, but you do get the sales. So you just got to watch the direction or the process that you put your business into. And so we very closely followed where the customers are wanting our products, whilst also stay in touch with all of the product approval and verification processes. And I think at one point, we will go through that, and it'll be quite an interesting process. But right now, it's not a priority.
Okay, so you don't need to go through that right now. Now, final question on the graphene production process. Does GMG's graphene production process violate the patent of Levidian's graphene production process? How big of a difference is this production process? Is there any risk of a conflict here?
Yeah, so we've been managing our ability to develop our graphene plant ever since we and produce and sell our graphene ever since we started in this space of patents. And we developed our own process, and it's very clearly our own process, that we then put that into a confidential patent application. And sometime into that, we then retracted that application because we realized that the downsides were too strong for the upsides of just sharing our IP more broadly without being able to control the process patent information. So we retracted that, and we've maintained a very clear, and I think so far to date, trade secret, a very clear, successful trade secret, and we'll continue to focus on that to be able to keep it as core IP for the business and maintain a competitive advantage in that space. It's one thing to kind of say, what do we do and what other people do, and patents and trade secrets. Another thing is just to come, and which of course we can't because of the IP controls around our visitors. But if you did see our plant, and you'd see how it works. Yeah, it's a very, very different plant than otherwise that's in any type of patent documents around the world.
Okay. Well, thank you for those answers, Craig. Let's now move more into the battery division. First, pouch packs. When can we expect some data on this? Energy density, volumetric density, temperature effects on performance. When do you think we could see some data on the pouch packs?
Yeah, so as we announced on Monday, very happily announced we're going into the next phase of buying more equipment and then also starting to produce pouch cells for customer data, and we've signed our first kind of collaboration. It's basically a non-binding term sheet to be able to, well, LOI, to be able to then step into that phase with them, and we expect a number of more potential battery customers in that space over the next year. Now, when we publish data and kind of share information off that feedback is really up to where we get to in terms of the customer feedback. But that process is already kicked off, and we're really quite happy about where that's going. So we'll start making more pouch cells as we progressively build up. We've got more people and more equipment coming already, and then through next year. And then as we get more and more information and become clear on where the pouch cells are going, there are so many applications that we'll be testing to see which are the best for the different applications and customers, and see who's wanting to run with us fastest. And then what are the applications where we really can have a very demonstrable competitive advantage, and that's obviously what we're after, so that we can come in and go in that blue ocean. There's enough battery companies doing the red ocean stuff. We want to find our genuine blue ocean that is really nice sailing with a really good competitive, very competitive spirit of collaboration with a number of large companies. So that's what we're now working through. We've had hundreds of companies come across our website, inbound requests to work with us. We've now selected, I'd say less than 20 in the end that we'll actually work with. Probably, maybe far less, depends on where we want to get to, but it'll be definitely less than 20. And they'll be in a range of different applications, but they're generally world leading in what they do, or eventually will be at scale, of world scale. But that's where we're definitely focused on, is these large companies who can bring with us experience of what kind of products they want to see in their future portfolio / what they already got, what they want a battery for that. And that's really exciting. It really is. It's a great next phase of the company. So 2023 should be a lot of hard work, but a lot of fun, a lot of working with a lot of good team building within the business, sending out pouch cells, getting responses, iterating, making other ones, bringing them out, sending them out to other applications and customers, and then pulling together a very valid next step after that.
Okay, this ties into another question. Again, that's almost more focused on the big picture move and progression within these batteries that GMG is creating. I get a lot of questions on the batteries. There clearly are a lot of our listeners and investors that are excited about the progress of these batteries. But I did have a question that came in that was just asking, does Craig feel like they are progressing as fast as they reasonably can to push these pouch packs into production? Are there financial constraints that are holding back maybe faster developments? Big picture here, Craig, is this as fast as you can move with this battery technology?
Yeah, so there are two things. One is the supply chain and the battery technology, and then third is the team, to be able to make that the business. So the supply chain is us. So we are actually building the supply chain for this battery, the graphene production, as well as the technology, the battery technology. And so we're doing two things at the same time, and it's imperative that is done at the same time, and it's almost impossible to do either one of those without having them both in one shed. It'd be very difficult to do it otherwise. So there's certainly probably more challenge in that. I have to be open about that. That is more challenging, but you couldn't do it otherwise, right? So we've got capable people doing world leading work in this space. I think there's going to come a time when the third point around the business is the technology is really there, and then we need to scale. So there's the old saying, too many chefs spoil the broth. We're not there right now. We maybe a year ago we were definitely there, but we're kind of coming out of that phase where we could have too many people and it actually slows it down, because there's only so much people you can pour over technology in a space which can make sense. So the next phase, I think we're coming to it, which is where it's really a matter of saying the tech is done. We've established all of these range of factors, and they're all considered de-risked in a pretty solid way. And then you throw the people and the money at it. So we're not fully there yet, but we are on our way there. And that's probably the best way to describe it. So right now, the biggest lever for me is I'm focusing on building this team that can run the first two. And that's a lot of work that I'm putting in around that, personally, and also with the team, the senior executive team, and that's going to be a big focus early next year and mid next year. So we're building that team can actually scale when we believe we think we could really have the tech done, and we're just now saying like let's just get after this. So I think that might help explain kind of where I see it.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, Craig. And you know what? We have seen progress on both the coin cell and pouch packs. Sounds like next year, well, we should be getting more news out of those. Just a quick question on the other divisions, that being the graphene lubricants and the thermal XR divisions. It comes out of revenue estimates or outlooks for these divisions. Can you share with us any details? Might there be any significant revenue in the next 1 to 2 years out of any of these divisions? Or could the company even spin out or license these different divisions to get some market value?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and we're heavily focused on pushing the sales in both the G-Lubes and the Thermal XR, and I think there's good opportunity for some good sales next year. And we have had sales this year. We've had different types of sales in different channels. So in both those products, and we're going to continue progressing them. the way to get more sales in this new technology space is to get as much data as you can in as many variable different types of situations, so you can say to your customer that you really understand the product. And so there's been a lot of work that we've been doing in definitely thermal XR, and increasingly also now in graphene lubricants. We're getting some really good data there and some sales as well in Asia. So that's really, the best way to describe that when you know you've got enough data, it's because you're getting good, really strong, big, large sales. So we continue to drive the data until that happens. When we see the more data we get, the more traction we get. And there's lots of big companies who are in the pipeline. They're very seriously looking at this. We've got a North American distributor that we're working with quite closely. We're working through on thermal XR. And we've got some big companies interested in the G lubricants, so we're working through on. So I think the best way to describe it is that we're on a data, very big data space. So when we come out with more data, publicly, you'll know that we really are progressing to closer and closer to a bigger sales. So that's really quite exciting. Like, we know we're getting good data coming through, and then when we can verify it to a point that is really clear and crystal, to the point where it's as simple as a one-page document, that's when we'll publish that data, and then I think you'll know as a shareholder that that's where we are definitely progressing into sales as well.
All right, Craig, thank you for addressing those questions. As I mentioned, everyone, if you still have more questions, please email those to me, fleck@kereport.com. If I happen to miss any that were sent, please resend those. I'll get Craig to address those. I'll respond to you directly, and I'll be following up with Craig as we get some more news that comes out of the company and when we build up another list of questions. Craig, thank you, as always, for your time. We appreciate the update.
Yeah, me too, to talk to you. Thanks, Cory.